Focus, have a goal, grow and maintain what you have, and you will get somewhere. More friends, more relationships, more money, whatever. And that's what we do in life. We gather these more values, more skills, and we stack them to build a better life. That's really how I see it. Pain is the most interesting sensation. Yes.
So, Jaron, thank you so much for hanging out with me today on 50 Tastes of Grey. This is nice to have you.
Thank you so much, Matthew.
Those are a lot of books.
Yeah, no, I ordered enough, but it's also print on demand on Amazon. But I wanted to be sure that I had one to sell or give away to anybody who inquired for the next little while.
That's wild. So it's print on demand, and yet you printed on demand a bunch for yourself.
I wanted to get early readers out there, get early reviews, and sign a lot of books for at least friends and family. So that's been really amazing. I've gotten a lot of awesome reviews and comments and things.
You know, back in the day, Jaron, when people are doing books, they did what we called self-published books. And those you really had to buy if you were the author. And so you had to set aside a room in your house and put your 5,000 books in there and just hope to God that people would want to buy them one way or another, because this was before the internets and all of that. So it was like a different experience completely.
Exactly. So feel so lucky and blessed to be in this day and age where I can.
You know, a minute ago you said it's really nice to be able to sign books for people. Have you done that? And what does it feel like?
It's really a dream come true. And the people, the conversations that I've had about the book touching people's lives and stuff, whereas I imagined it being with people around the world, I hope that someday, but it's been my friends and family from around the world and acquaintances and people that come in to see me or that I've met on the street. I had a practically homeless guy ask me, saw my license plate, which says Curve with 2 U's, which is the name of the book. And what's that? Oh, it's my book. Can I get a copy? So it's been a really cool adventure.
So did you give him the copy or did you have him purchase it? The nearly homeless guy.
I gave him one.
Okay, I figured that.
And I signed it. I'm keeping a pen with me
man.
in my pocket all the time too, or a thin-tipped Sharpie. That's what I was told from one author a couple years ago. Always carry a thin-tipped Sharpie. So I followed that.
You're a very good man. So just in case any of our viewers send you an email and saying they're nearly homeless, don't be a fool and just send them books, okay?
Right. Well,
you got to watch the business.
Right. Maybe an audio or a PDF in exchange for a honest review.
Right. Now there's the way to go. That sounds really good.
Electronic doesn't cost anything.
So Jaron, before we get into more of the specifics of the Curve, Built to Thrive, have you ever been thrown a curveball?
Yes. Yeah, quite a few.
And are you able to hit the curveball?
I'm getting better and better at it. And that's the point of the book.
I figured it was. Now, you know that there are no flat, straight surfaces in nature. So everything is some form of a curve, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Do you have any information to talk about that for people and let them know what a typical curve might look like in mathematics or physics or relationships?
Yeah, like you said, there's no straight lines in nature. That's something that we've created. Everything is on a curve. But of course, our planet is a curve. So if you want to go from here to there, you're actually following a curve because the planet is curved. And therefore, the straightest line across a sphere is a curve. And so there are so many ways that it shows up. But I think the biggest thing that hit me over the head was this concept that's in the book that really is behind the learning curve, which might be something people are most familiar with. So the learning curve, I think people understand that. Well, let me lay it out for you. This curve is, there's 2 major curves that I've seen out there in science that people talk about a lot. And one is the common curve, which is just like a hump shape. And that is like the life cycle of a person or a species or civilizations. They rise and then they fall. And it's sort of like this upside down U shape. And then there's this other curve, which we see in like statistics of, the rich versus the poor. It's this slow to get going and then a steep ascent. And that's the curve that I'm really talking about. That's the curve that lays out the exceptional, whereas the common curve lays out the average. And so the learning curve, just to finish this thought, is the understanding that it takes a while. It takes some effort, some time, and some, ingenuity to get going. And if you move along this curve, as you get down there, things get easier more enjoyable and the rewards come in faster and faster.
So we're talking about utilizing these techniques and this information to help people overcome areas in which they're maybe unhappy or they would like to access into greater power.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Uh-huh. Tell us how that might have worked for you before the book came along.
So I think the big sort of crux of my origin story with this book is that in my mid 30s, I had done a lot, but I had really been a jack of all trades. I'd gone to college for a couple different times. I had a few different certifications and degrees. I was living a good life but I had a lot of interest I was following, but I really felt like I didn't get traction with anything in particular. And I didn't just see the kind of success that I wanted in almost any area of life. So I heard about this term, the 80-20 rule, which I'd heard in passing a couple of times. And again, I heard it on a podcast or a YouTube episode, and I decided to dig in. So I sat on the couch, dug into the research, and what I found really blew my mind and led to this whole series of insights. And the basic key of it is this, that everything does follow that curve, that only with consistent effort towards a focused goal will you actually get there. And only by building and maintaining what you have can you build a sort of stair step to what you want. And the next insight was that it happens in every area of life. Relationships, finances, business, health. You can apply it to just about anything. Focus, have a goal, grow and maintain what you have, and you will get somewhere. More friends, more relationships, more money, whatever it is.
Take one of those elements aside and walk us through the beginning stage and then how, let's say, money, because money is so important to people. How would somebody who wants more money apply any of the principles written about in your curve and help them get to a better place?
Well, that's a perfect one, even though I don't mention the word money maybe only shows up 2 or 3 times in this entire book, even though it's about success and it's about thriving, because money is really the result of doing good actions, saving, investing, all kinds of things that you can learn and do. So it really is about stacking and it's about accumulation. So it's about stacking and accumulating skills, stacking and accumulating the money itself, which is a value, and doing all the steps that are needed to learn and to grow that thing. So it's similar to relationships. You add a friend, keep in touch with that friend, and then you add another friend, but you keep in touch with the old friend and you keep in touch with the new friend. Well, same thing with money. You have to put it somewhere. Hopefully it's maturing or at least it's being saved. And then you add more money, you add more. And as you get more complex, you can build in systems to actually systematize those values that you have, like the value of saving, the value of investing, the value of accumulating. And to build a better life. That's really how I see it. And the curve just shows up in all those areas. So if you apply the values, keep stacking, keep building, you'll have more.
Yeah, that sounds like very, very practical advice. That's something that, perhaps mom or grandma might have told us when we were little kids, right? Put some money away, save for the future, things like that. Be gentle, be smart, do all the good things, right?
That's right. Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about your history prior to the book and what kind of got you here. I know that you work for your family's jewelry store. Is that correct? So tell us a little bit about the little boy.
Yeah. So I grew up in a really beautiful family and we traveled a lot. We had a lot of culture. We went to the symphony, the opera. We, did volunteer work. We did all the stuff, but we didn't have, and we had a very cush living situation, but we hardly had a working TV. We didn't get a computer until later. We didn't have any junk food. But it wasn't about being rigid or anything like that. It was just simple. It was just more basic. But, I was thinking about food because of you. I was thinking about how passing down to my grandparents were very like old school gourmet. It was just like the good food, the real food. You go to the farmer's market, the farmer, you always, you get the good meat. When somebody's coming from the next town, you're like, stop at this bakery, stop at this deli. It was, a really wholesome, but cultured life. So I grew up Jewish. There was a lot to do within the Jewish community, but we were reformed. It wasn't about strict Judaism, but there were some really beautiful teachings that came from that. So I had an older sister, younger brother. Like I said, we traveled. We had I lived in the Midwest where I still live, and I'm the fifth generation in this jewelry store. So my great great grandfather came over from near Kiev to create a better life for himself. And we really, each generation has had their own way of entrepreneurship, even though we've handed this business down in a sense. So with that, I had that great foundation, and I thought at 14, 15, like I know a lot, and I don't want to go into college and follow this straight and narrow path like so many people do. Like I felt like I knew a lot and I wanted to explore the world. So I left my parents' house. I went hitchhiking. I followed bands. I lived on the West Coast. I traveled around the country doing things that teenagers do, especially in the age before 9/11 and stuff like that. And I came home when I was about 19, 20 and started my own company. And it was an organic tea company, ran that for some years, went to college for health science. The business was doing so well that I moved it out to Colorado. I had hundreds of locations selling my stuff, and that was really a great training. And I got, crunchy lifestyle that I wanted, as well as this sort of success moving forward, dressing up and having meetings with people. I really felt like I had this cool balance of life. So lots of things happened. I came back through a snowboard accident, actually, while I was out there. That was one of the big falls from grace and a big turning point in my life, kind of downward. I went back to school. I had a child. I raised him separate from his mother. It was a long 10 years. So after 10 years of starting some other businesses, getting another degree, in my mid 30s, I came across this concept, and it really helped me track, stack, accumulate so much more. So now I have a family. I have a 6-year-old with my wife and my stepdaughter, who's 17 now, but we've been together for 10 years. We've got a really cool, fun, dynamic life now.
It seems to me that in the past 15 or so, 20 years, that the diamond reputation has taken a kick in the ass because of a few different factors. One was the blood diamond thing that came along several years ago. And then after that, now they're doing lab-created diamonds. So tell me a little bit about the industry behind the scenes, about what's going on with diamonds.
Yeah. It's like a lot of things where the news makes a big deal about things and there's loud people on the fringes, but in reality, on the ground, it really hasn't changed that much. The people who've always really been into natural diamonds stick with natural diamonds. The people who are like, I want to get more affordable diamonds, they come in for the lab diamonds. And honestly, it hasn't changed the industry that much. We have been talking intensely for 15 years about how it's going to upend the industry. And now after this amount of time, it really seems like it's evened out. And you have there's more affordable stuff with diamonds that are very similar and identical. And there's, billion-year-old diamonds that are natural and raw, and people still love those. And the industry has also showed up, I've seen, in a number of ways, and we're a part of organizations that help the miners and that show that a lot of these people who mine, with obviously glaring exceptions, a lot of these miners love what they do. They're happy to go be outside, look for stones, and when they find something that might be a year's worth of income, and it's not these harsh conditions down inside mines. Most people are on the sides of hills, in their backyards, chopping rocks. This isn't like your old school in the cold mine kind of thing.
Would you notice that perhaps if you took a look at any sort of sales over the past decade or two, would that track with what you just said? Or have sales of diamonds actually gone down? Perhaps not jewelry itself, but diamonds specifically?
I don't think so. I think that the lab market has come in, and that's a little bit lower priced jewelry, but it costs that much less to make those diamonds or to attain those diamonds. So it really has not meant that much difference for the industry. Yes, natural diamonds definitely had, fell out of favor and had bottomed out for a little while, but it's on the rise, and it seems like lab diamonds have hit their place where they're holding steady, and it's not going to get any lower, because they've gotten down to the cost of producing it.
It's very interesting. Another thing you mentioned a few minutes ago when you're talking about your past and so on with your grandparents and enjoying, I guess, casual gourmet. So since you brought up the whole food thing, and we do talk about that occasionally, tell me, what have you eaten today?
So started off with my mate drink that I like to have just about every morning. I used to drink coffee, but it hasn't agreed with me as much. And mate was my thing. That's what I started my tea company on. It's a South American tea. It's not actually related to tea, but anyway, it's an herb, it's a plant. You can make it very flavorful and much more concentrated than regular tea. So a little bit of coconut milk, a little bit of maple syrup, cinnamon, vanilla, and mix that up. That was amazing. I almost always skip breakfast. And then I went and worked out with a couple of guys on a friend's farm, and he made us a farm fresh meal of locally sourced farm raised meat and zucchini, green beans, a couple other veggies, and some vodka marinara sauce.
Well, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
Sounds like you had a good experience so far today.
Yes, yes,
And
thank you.
what's on the menu for tonight?
Ooh, that's a good question. The rest of the family went to the beach. I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm probably going to find a friend and see if we can go out to a nice meal together.
Okay, that sounds good. Now, tell me why your book. I'm looking at the title and I'm seeing two U's in the word curve. Why did you choose that?
Well, it's two reasons. One, just blatantly to be findable, to make it easy to just find me and find a word and a subject that I could get the .com, the YouTube, all the social media. But the other reason is, and the subtitle used to be, have a little caret over the U to say what you can be. So it is about, the curve is like life happens on a curve. We talked about curves are all over the place, and it's an important concept. I feel like I call it self-development 1.0, this understanding of what the curve is. And the real point is that what you do with your curve, with the curve, what you apply yourself to or how you apply it is really what matters.
It seems to me, from the outside looking in and listening to you speak, it sounds like the curve has more of a philosophical bent than it does on technique related issues. Would that be true?
There's a certain truth to it, but one of the first people that I talked to before I started this book was my family is friends with an economist that works in Washington and in think tanks, a really prestigious economist. And I called him up and asked him about this concept. And he said, this is what economics is based on. This theory is what started the whole school of economics itself. And basically, this is the core theory of understanding, the way economics work.
Interesting. I wanted to ask you, what is your relationship to failure, and how do you refer to curve to help you get over those kind of situations in your life?
Well, I think one of the things that I realized within the first few days or hours of seeing this, all these epiphanies were coming to light. And I realized how life, like I said before, needs to, you need to maintain what you have and go further, and maintain that and then go further. And most people and all of us have these certain times where, because of health or because of illness or just because of circumstances or just chaos, things that happen in life, you might go down to zero. You might, whether it's your bank account or your friends or your health, it's just too easy to fall off and to at least feel like everything fell apart. And it actually can, life can fall apart in a lot of different ways. So I am very familiar with failure. And until I really took hold of this concept, I was all too familiar with failure because I didn't really understand how to grow, how to maintain, how to get somewhere and be realistic about where I am, realistic about what I want to go, and do the steps and maintain what was there in order to get there. And without that maintaining, it's easy to fall back to zero and failure shows up.
Do you see that people will respond better to curiosity or anxiety and pressure to be able to move forward and get to a greater, more positive role in their life?
That's a great question. I want to say curiosity. I want to say it's the optimistic side. And I really believe that building the positive things is what we need, is the most important thing. Moving away from pain, I feel like, is not as powerful as moving towards thriving, but they both are very potent. And so, of course, we want to move away from pain, but that doesn't necessarily mean you'd move to thriving. It maybe just means you'd move to the middle ground, which is pain-free. So I really believe in that optimistic curiosity, going further, and even if there are bad things going on in your life, start increasing the good things and try to flatten out those bad things.
What came into my head, what was going through my head when I asked that question is that being curious is a great thing. It's a wonderful thing. It's life affirming and all that, but it's also something you do at your own pace.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're under pressure, that survival instinct kicks in and that monkey brain kicks in and things like that maybe help you to step further and faster to a goal that you might have in mind. Any thoughts on that?
That is so true. Yeah, and it's galvanizing. So just a couple days ago, I woke up feeling like I wasn't doing everything in life that I should be doing. And was walking around with this feeling. So I did a lot of writing, a lot of thinking, a lot of talking to my wife. And that really helped me show up in new ways. And it was that pain and that sense of failure that really galvanized me to move forward. So there may be more powerful. The negative may be more powerful. It's present. It's and pain is a very is the most, my wife likes to say, pain is the most interesting sensation.
Yeah, I think that's why, you get your ass kicked when you're young and people, make fun of you. It's like there's so many different factors in our lives, whether we're little kids or grown up adults, when pressure or all those kind of negative things are really actually driving forces.
Yeah, it's so true. I know you need both because running away from negativity is not necessarily going to create something positive, but it does help to do away, to get away from the negativity and transform it in some ways. So I know you need both. That's a really good, there's something to that I need to explore a little more.
I'm sorry.
I just have this little idea that creation and connection are the two sort of stair steps, the two things that you need to stair step. Like creation brings you upward, and then connection moves you over, and then creation. And in the other side, destruction and disconnection are what have you, falling away from thriving.
Right. Well, people can get too comfortable sometimes, and that's kind of what I was thinking in the back of my mind when we were discussing this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have any long held belief as a child or now as an adult that has really changed since you've been focusing and thinking about the curve and its methods?
Well, I think there was a decent amount of, and not from my parents, more from culture, definitely, about believing that, just there were really these empty phrases: follow your heart, do what you love, and kind of like there are shortcuts and there's magic. And, I do sort of believe in some of these things, but in general, there were so many hollow phrases that made you think that you didn't have to work hard, that if something was hard, that meant it wasn't right, that things, should be easy, whether it's relationships or getting money, and that there are some kind of shortcuts that if you're just in the right place at the right time, that your whole life is going to change and get great. Yeah.
Is there something about your work that you wish that people would have asked you about throughout your life, but they really don't very often, or they haven't? About your style of work, about your philosophies or tendencies or anything like that?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. I can't, since I have a lot of friends and I go to a lot of groups and, a lot of different interesting things where we're talking and discussing, I feel like I've heard so much of it. So I think I've been in open enough spots. I can't think of anything offhand.
What kind of groups do you attend?
Well, like I have a laughter club with a bunch of guys that we meet in the morning on a Zoom call. Used to only be two or three of us. Now there's five or six. But it's a really interesting, cool, therapeutic thing. I've got a men's group, and I have a few friend groups around here. We do book clubs. Of course, I have my jewelry store and our employees. We do interesting things with them. I also go to a lot of festivals and have led and been a part of a lot of workshops. So I have a lot of friends that are leaders in these things. So it's got to be 2, 3, 4 times a week. I'm sitting in a group of people talking about, success or empowerment or raising children or some juicy part of life.
When you mentioned that you went to a laughter group, I was thinking that you and a bunch of other frustrated comedians are having a fun time. Is that true?
It is a little bit like that. It is a little bit like that, and we do try to joke with each other and make each other laugh, but it's really like laughter is this exercise and release in itself, and just the nature of getting past the embarrassment and working through and just doing these laughter exercises is therapeutic in its own way, and makes you a little more courageous and maybe a little more funny.
Well, I just want to have you be comfortable in case you got a great joke you want to tell. I'm open to it.
Right. Uh, it'll come up in the right time, I hope.
So do you see the curve as still evolving, even though it's finished the book? And if it is still evolving, how is it going to continue to evolve?
Yeah, it really is evolving. There are 44 chapters in this book and about 40 personal stories that go with most of the chapters. So there's almost like 80 some chapters in the book. So it took me a long time, and there was a lot in there. Now, there are dozens of chapters that were left out, and I've been thinking about doing some YouTube videos and things that are like, hidden chapters or left out chapters. I'm thinking about doing another book, but I really feel that there's a lifetime's worth of work here. And I told myself when I started this that, like, once I get the book done, I've got at least 10 years of content to talk about before, I feel like my audience will be ready to move on, even though I'm almost ready to move on to some other concepts. But I feel like these are so fundamental, and I call it self-development 1.0, or the first principles of progress, that I feel like some of these concepts are things that I should have read in a book written in the late 1800s, because I've read lots of self-development books that have been published over the last 100 or so years. But it just wasn't there. Now it's all tips and tricks and little stories and things. I feel like this is fundamental understandings that are first.
Well, self-development is not a luxury. It's actually a survival tool. And I think that that's something that people need to understand if they're going to explore their future, and whether it's success or health or happiness, right?
Yeah, I think you're so right. I think it's beyond that. It's the way we make a better world. It's the way we make a better self. It's everything. It's the best.
Do you understand what the Pareto principle is, and can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so there's so many different ways to describe it. And just before I started this, I see that I have a book on the 80-20 rule back here, and it's 2 inches thick, and it's got 100 chapters or so. There are lots of different ways to slice it, but really what Pareto found was that there's this crazy split between the bottom and the top, which we've seen it many times. And so he discovered, he was the first one to go through these government documents and go through all these ledgers, because it was the first time all this stuff was public. And he found that the difference in wealth and land ownership and education was just humongous. And that's passe. We all know that, like, obviously, but we say, and what he said too, that's a problem. He said that's unnatural. But what the Pareto principle basically says is that is natural. That is the way that things go. It's not a coin flip 50-50. It's more like 80-20 or even further. And the more creative the endeavors go, the more that split gets bigger. And that's why Beethoven is played more often than, almost every amateur musician put together in history. Because the more creative a person gets and they get up that stair step, they are far and away, the split becomes huge. So the Pareto curve just says that things happen on a curve, and the difference between the bottom and the top is extreme.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that, because that's definitely what that whole 80-20 thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And the 80-20 rule is just an average of averages to say that generally it's not 50-50, it's more like 80-20. And it does show up in these curious ways where 80% of car accidents are caused by the worst 20% of drivers, 80% of crimes are committed by 20% of the worst criminals, and on and on.
Oh, that's so interesting. It sounds like this book is really a conglomeration of your hustle and your spirit.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
And these cool little concepts.
Right, right, right. So how much studying went into writing this book?
my whole lifetime plus this 5 years. So I guess I prepared for it for about 2 years, thought I might do a podcast or launch a YouTube. I was taking a walk with a friend and he said, "This sounds like a book. It seems like you should put this into a book." And that just felt so good for me. So it took me about 4 months before I was like, I think that I got this. And I spent, all my time for 4 or 5 months. And then I realized it's got a lot longer to go. And over the next 4 years, on and off, I thought I had finished it. I hired different, like a spiritual editor, a sort of like cultural editor, different people to read the book and give me their perspective, and each one gave me something to go back to the drawing board with. And it was 6 months to a year for each major editor. They weren't an editor like were grammatical, they were more like an overall looking at the content, and it really helped me to get to something awesome. But it also brought together so many things that I've learned in life, whether spiritual or social, or it really seemed to tie together so many things I've learned, even in my Jewish upbringing. It just made sense across the board. Yeah.
Did you suffer burnout early on, and was that part of what led you to this? And if you did suffer burnout, you're a young man. Did it come along early? Was it premature burnout?
I think there's been a number of times when I burned out, and that was part of before learning about the curve, I burned out because I didn't really realize the nature of progress. And I'm also a very naturally curious person. So like we were saying before, all the failures, and since I didn't know the trajectory or have a sense or stick with things maybe long enough, I would try and build up and then fail and say, this isn't for me many times. Yeah.
On the creative side of life, other than writing and doing your laughter group and your men's groups and working out and eating and having a family and all that, what do you do? What's one specific thing you love to do?
Playing guitar and singing.
Oh, is that right?
And singing, yeah. I mostly just do it for myself. I don't too often, but I do. And then maybe an extension of that is that one of the community things that I do a lot of these song circles. So this is something that's become more and more popular, and I see around, and a number of my friends do it, and we've been to them around the country. And it's really just people getting together to sing songs together that are, that are things that you can sing as a group. And it may get a cappella, it may get interesting. Somebody will come in and say, here's a simple song that I know. They'll teach it to everybody else. We sing it together, and it's really fun.
So it sounds like you lead a pretty social life, even in the post-COVID days. Is that something that you noticed over time in the last 5 years, let's just say, where people were maybe quiet near the beginning of that edge, but now they're coming out of it and being able to do things that you're doing?
Absolutely. I mean, we were very focused on that fact of people closing down and not gathering together. And we were really fighting for a lot of that time to keep our social life, to have a big group of friends. That's one reason why we built the bus to travel in, because that was about a year into COVID. We're like, we want to travel, we want to see things, but we don't want to go in and out of hotel rooms and whatever. We just want to be able to go to the places and find the people who want to do things.
I always think that when authors come on here, that when my audience gets a taste or a feel for that person, it speaks volumes more than the actual book would if we just spoke about that. So this is a really nice kind of inside look at you, your personality, and getting to reveal that. If people are interested in you and they want to get the book, how would they do that?
Thecurve.com is probably the best place, and that can send you to any of the other areas right there on the front. It's like, Amazon book, Kindle book, Audible book, and you can also buy the audiobook on my website for maybe $1 cheaper, and without having to do any subscription things. But it is on KDP. There are a couple, if you go on the Amazon network or the Google Play, there's some discounts out there.
I'm guessing that if there's an audiobook in the wild, that you had to voice it. Since you love to sing, you must have used your own voice.
Absolutely.
Yes?
Had to. It took a long time, but I'm really glad I did. I couldn't have anybody else do it.
Did you have to go into a recording studio to be able to do that?
No, I kind of built my own studio, and I did have to hire somebody to help me master it, because that took some time. But But otherwise, I did almost everything else myself. Like I said, I had some early readers, I had some editors, I hired some people for some things, but I really did from the book design to the recording to all that. I even laying it out, and I did that all.
Oh, that's fantastic. Jaron, I'm so glad that you visited with me today on 50 Tastes of Grey. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have?
Thank you so much, Matthew. I really love your show. I really love everything that you do. I've been reading your blogs and your Substacks, and like, so cool. And you have an awesome story. So I want to know from you, what did you eat today and what are you going to eat tonight?
Believe it or not, we're out of eggs. So nothing's been eaten today, but typically it'd be eggs, bacon, avocado always, cheese, too much coffee. And that's pretty much how I start my day. I do a lot of kind of carb carnivore type stuff nowadays, fewer carbs than I used to, and stuff like that. And it's really a great thing. So tonight will probably be, chicken tacos or something along those lines.
Love it. Love it.
So don't expect me to give you any sort of an idea of foods that, like, no lasagnas are happening here tonight or spaghetti, unfortunately.
Right.
But yeah, and nothing Hawaiian for tonight.
I see. Yeah, we're in the land and time of fresh food here. So it's all a lot of salads and a lot of veggies because everything is bursting.
But you do eat meat happily,
Yes,
it
I do.
sounds like.
I do. I
Okay.
was a vegetarian for a long time. And then I went to naturopath school, of all places, where they taught me about
Okay.
being healthy. And they were like, you're not healthy because you're not eating meat. And they were right, at least for me.
It, you see, the more we talk, the more the hits keep coming. So, yeah, very interesting. So you went through that path too. And I think a lot of people do.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
don't realize that the food that they're putting into their body is the biggest drug in their system.
Hmm.
And so you have to be able to respond to whatever's inside you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big, strong belief system that I had, and maybe the science was a little different then too. But I really held strong to that. I was saving the planet and all kinds of things, but I wasn't necessarily saving myself.
Right. It was a little bit out of whack there. Well, thank you, brother. It was really nice meeting you, and say aloha to all of our audience.
I will. I will. Thank you, Matthew, for everything you do. Be well.